July 3, 1863. Confederate General James Longstreet stares across Pennsylvania farmland, watching his nightmare become reality. 15,000 Confederate soldiers prepare to charge into hell itself. He knows they're all about to die for absolutely nothing meaningful whatsoever. Imagine holding a loaded revolver against your beloved brother's head, your finger trembling on the cold trigger, knowing you must pull it. That's exactly how Longstreet felt watching Robert E. Lee plan the most suicidal assault in American military history. You think you know Gettysburg's story? Noble sacrifices, glorious charges, heroic last stands against overwhelming odds. But what if the real tragedy wasn't defeat, but knowing defeat was inevitable? What if wisdom was deliberately ignored for honor's sake? James Longstreet earned his fearsome reputation as Lee's old war horse through brutal mathematics. Kill more enemies than you lose soldiers. Defense beats offense. Patience conquers recklessness. At Gettysburg, these proven principles would clash directly with dangerous Southern romanticism. Dawn breaks over Seminary Ridge like spilled blood across white marble. Longstreet's weathered hands shake violently as he raises his field glasses, surveying ground that will soon swallow the finest flower of Confederate manhood in its hungry Pennsylvania soil forever. Mary Virginia Wade kneads bread dough in her sister's cramped kitchen, humming hymns while cannon thunder shakes flour from wooden shelves. She doesn't know Confederate sharpshooters are positioning themselves mere yards away, or that today will be her very last. General Lee, we should flank them southward, force them to attack us on ground of our choosing. Longstreet's voice carries the heavy weight of hard experience, but Lee's eyes burn with desperate ambition. Two competing philosophies collide beneath morning stars. Cemetery Ridge rises before them like nature's perfect fortress, Union artillery crowning every elevation, infantry positioned behind stone walls, reserves waiting in perfect depth. Any military academy student could see the tactical impossibility stretching across that deadly killing field. Think of chess masters contemplating their final moves. Lee sees checkmate through audacious sacrifice. Longstreet sees only suicide masquerading as brilliant strategy. Between them stretches the graveyard of Confederate hopes, waiting patiently to claim its bloody harvest of young men. Private Samuel Pickens from rural Alabama writes his final letter. Dear Mama, if God wills that I don't return home, know that I died believing in something greater than myself. Kiss baby sister goodbye. His tears smudge ink like rain. Longstreet's military philosophy was forged in Mexican war trenches and sharpened through Virginia campaigns. Never attack prepared positions when you can force the enemy to attack yours instead. Simple wisdom that could have saved the Confederacy from itself. But Lee carries Virginia's hopes on his shoulders like Atlas bearing the entire world. Every mile deeper into Pennsylvania represents Confederate legitimacy, European recognition, Northern war weariness. Retreat feels like surrendering everything they fought and died to achieve through bloodshed. The artillery barrage begins at 1 o'clock. 150 Confederate cannons roaring across summer air like thunder. Thunder rolls through Pennsylvania valleys while smoke clouds bloom like black roses against innocent blue sky, announcing the symphony of destruction. Dr. Cyrus Bacon, Union surgeon, sharpens his bone saw while watching Confederate shells explode harmlessly beyond Federal lines. They're shooting too high, he mutters grimly to himself, knowing this means Union positions remain completely intact for the assault. Union batteries reply with methodical precision, 80 cannons firing 4 rounds per minute exactly. Mathematics of death. 320 shells every 60 seconds, each one seeking Confederate flesh. The earth itself convulses under this metallic earthquake of modern warfare. Longstreet watches smoke clear momentarily, revealing Cemetery Ridge's defenders completely unscathed. The preliminary bombardment, Lee's master stroke, has accomplished nothing except consuming precious ammunition and announcing Confederate intentions. Disaster approaches like inevitable summer lightning through gathering storm clouds. Picture perfect battle lines stretching nearly 1 mile wide. 15,000 Confederates rising from concealment, like wheat stalks before harvest. Regimental colors snap in afternoon breeze, each banner carrying home memories that will soon become funeral shrouds for grieving families. General George Pickett approaches on horseback, his flowing hair and immaculate uniform marking him as Virginia cavalry born for this moment. "Shall I advance, General Longstreet?" Youth and glory incarnate, requesting permission to charge into eternity with his men. Longstreet cannot speak, cannot form words that will transform living men into corpses. His throat constricts with the terrible weight of inevitable tragedy. He simply nods, a gesture that dooms thousands to become legends through their destruction and sacrifice. You're witnessing the most beautiful military disaster in American history. Confederate battle lines advance in perfect order. Dress maintained, officers calling cadence, sunlight gleaming off polished bayonets. Death has never looked so magnificent or felt so certain and inevitable. Corporal James Clay from North Carolina clutches his musket while thinking about his sweetheart's last letter. Her words dance through his mind. "Come home safe to me, Jimmy. He'll be dead within 20 minutes." Her letter blood-stained forever. The advance begins across open ground, nearly 1 mile of exposed terrain where every step brings them closer to Union guns. For 5 precious minutes, it resembles a parade rather than warfare. Beauty masquerading as annihilation in broad daylight. Halfway across that deadly field, Federal artillery opens with devastating precision. Canister rounds tear gaps in Confederate ranks like invisible scythes cutting human grain. Men simply disappear in crimson mist, while their comrades continue advancing over their remains. Longstreet's field glasses reveal the horrible mathematics of modern warfare multiplied by minutes. 80 Federal guns, 4 rounds per minute, 320 shells every 60 seconds. Each explosion represents someone's son becoming a casualty statistic in history books. Confederate momentum falters as flanking fire decimates their ranks. The parade formation collapses into a desperate wedge charging toward stone walls lined with death incarnate. Survival becomes random chance. Courage becomes meaningless against superior firepower and defensive positions. Brigadier General Lewis Armistead ties his black hat to his sword tip, raising it high as a rally point for his dying brigade. "Follow me to glory, boys," he shouts, leading survivors through smoke so thick it blocks sunlight. For 30 miraculous seconds, Armistead's men actually reach Union lines. Hands grasping stone walls, bayonets crossing in deadly choreography, Confederate battle flags waving briefly over Federal positions before the inevitable counterattack sweeps everything away like autumn leaves in wind. Armistead falls mortally wounded, just feet from Union guns, his life ebbing into Pennsylvania earth. His alleged last words: "Tell General Hancock I have wronged him terribly." Friendship transcending even Civil War's hatred and ideological poison between former friends. The retreat begins without orders, surviving Confederates stumbling back across that terrible field, carrying wounded comrades, leaving their dead scattered like fallen autumn leaves after violent storms. The Confederate dream dies with each backward step toward Seminary Ridge. Cold numbers tell the story better than poetry. Of Pickett's 3 brigade commanders, 2 lie dead, 1 wounded. Of 15 regimental commanders, 14 have fallen. Virginia's finest now fertilize Pennsylvania soil with their aristocratic blood and democratic dreams forever. General Pickett returns weeping openly, his division shattered beyond recognition. When Lee suggests rallying for potential counterattack, Pickett replies through tears, "General Lee, I have no division remaining." 3 words summarizing Confederate defeat perfectly and completely. That evening, summer rain begins washing blood from trampled wheat fields. Longstreet finds Lee staring across the battlefield like a broken king surveying his ruined kingdom. "This has been our saddest day," Lee whispers into gathering Pennsylvania darkness. Here's what haunts Longstreet through sleepless nights for 40 years afterward. Not the men who died, soldiers understand death, but the men who lived. Survivors who trusted his judgment, yet received his silence when they deserved his voice. Consider this philosophical question that tortures military commanders. When does loyalty become complicity? When does obedience transform into moral cowardice? When does following orders constitute betraying those who depend on your professional wisdom and experience for their survival? Elizabeth Thorne, pregnant caretaker of Evergreen Cemetery, spends weeks burying Confederate dead, whose families will never learn their final resting places. Her unborn child kicks as she works among graves, life stirring within death's domain like flickering hope against darkness. July 4th arrives with cold rain, as if heaven itself mourns American Independence Day, celebrated over fresh graves. Confederate wounded lie scattered across battlefields like broken dolls, their moans mixing with thunder, mocking national unity and democratic ideals. The retreat southward begins that night. 17 miles of wagons filled with wounded men whose screams echo through Pennsylvania valleys like accusatory ghosts. Longstreet's corps forms the rear guard, protecting the wreckage of Confederate ambitions and shattered dreams. Dr. Jonathan Letterman, Chief Union Medical Officer, operates continuously for 18 hours, saving wounded from both armies. "Bullets don't ask about politics before they tear flesh," he mutters, his hands stained with blue and gray blood equally. Think about this irony. Longstreet becomes history's scapegoat for daring to question Robert E. Lee's tactics, when his questioning might have saved the Confederacy from its most devastating defeat. Wisdom punished, folly romanticized through lost cause mythology. Years later, Southern critics attack Longstreet mercilessly for joining the Republican Party and supporting Reconstruction, choices making him a pariah among former Confederates who preferred mythologizing defeat to accepting responsibility for strategic disasters and tactical blunders. At veterans' reunions decades later, Union and Confederate survivors meet where they once tried killing each other. Gray-bearded men shake hands across stone walls that previously ran red with American blood, seeking reconciliation through shared trauma. But Longstreet rarely attends these gatherings. The sight of survivors proves more painful than memories of the dead. Living men remind him of choices that cannot be undone, orders that cannot be recalled from history's merciless judgment. His memoirs, published in 1896, defend his Gettysburg decisions while criticizing Lee's tactics. Southern reviewers savage him for desecrating their idol's memory, with inconvenient truths about military incompetence masquerading as gallant leadership and romantic heroism. Modern historians vindicate Longstreet's tactical judgment completely. Every professional military analysis confirms his assessment. Pickett's charge was doomed from conception. Experience had warned against glory's seductive but deadly siren call to destruction and fame. Yet vindication arrives too late for those who died, too late for families destroyed, too late for a nation that spent 4 years tearing itself apart over questions that reason could have resolved without bloodshed's terrible mathematics. Pennsylvania farmers complained for decades about plowing up bones, buttons, bullets, physical remnants of ideological arguments that cost 600,000 American lives to settle. The earth remembers what politicians prefer, forgetting about war's true price. Consider this mathematical horror. Pickett's charge lasted 30 minutes exactly. In that half hour, more Americans died than in most entire battles of previous wars. Modernity had transformed killing into terrifyingly efficient industrial process. Longstreet grasped what many generals ignored. Warfare had fundamentally changed. Rifled muskets, improved artillery, telegraph communications, technology favored defensive tactics over traditional gallant charges that belonged to bygone romantic eras of warfare. He'd absorbed this lesson at Antietam, watching Confederate attacks shatter against Union defensive positions like waves against granite cliffs. But Lee, intoxicated by previous victories, believed Southern fighting spirit could overcome any tactical disadvantage through pure will. The tragedy wasn't merely tactical, it was profoundly personal. Longstreet genuinely loved Lee like a father figure, respected him like a military deity. Questioning his decisions felt like betraying everything Longstreet considered sacred about duty and honor. Yet professional obligation to his soldiers demanded brutal honesty. Loyalty to the Confederate cause required preserving military strength for battles that could actually be won. The conflict between heart and mind nearly destroyed his soul completely. Picture Longstreet in his final years, a one-eyed old man haunted by memories of perfect battle lines advancing toward perfect destruction. Every crimson sunset reminded him of smoke-shrouded Pennsylvania fields where innocents died with courage. His wife Helen later wrote, "James would wake screaming sometimes, calling out warnings to men who'd been dead 40 years. The war never truly ended for him. It just moved inside his tortured mind and heart." In his final interview, Longstreet reflected, "I've been called Lee's scapegoat throughout history. Perhaps I was exactly that, but better to be remembered as history's scapegoat than celebrated as its butcher of innocent men." The ultimate question, haunting every military decision, echoes through time. When does loyalty become complicity in massacre? When does obedience transform into moral cowardice? When does following orders constitute betraying those who trust your professional judgment? Longstreet faced this ethical dilemma at Gettysburg and chose loyalty over logic, personal friendship over professional wisdom. The cost was measured not in lost battles, but in lost lives. Thousands of them feeding Pennsylvania soil forever. What if he'd refused Lee's orders completely? What if he'd resigned rather than participate in obvious suicide? What if professional integrity had triumphed over personal loyalty? History might have unfolded along entirely different, less tragic pathways. But 19th century military culture demanded absolute obedience to superior officers, regardless of tactical wisdom or moral reservations. Individual conscience was subordinated to institutional hierarchy. personal judgment sacrificed to collective discipline, and traditional honor codes. Modern military doctrine recognizes the moral obligation to refuse illegal or obviously suicidal orders. Longstreet lived before such enlightenment, trapped between personal conviction and professional duty, individual wisdom and institutional expectations of blind obedience. His story illuminates the terrible weight carried by military commanders: responsibility for lives entrusted to their care, obligation to achieve strategic objectives, pressure to maintain morale and discipline while preserving human dignity in warfare's environment. Think about the mathematics of command. Every decision multiplied by thousands of lives, every mistake magnified by its human cost, every moment of hesitation potentially determining whether young men return home or become casualty statistics. Today, monuments dot Gettysburg's battlefield, where Americans once killed Americans over questions that seem almost quaint now: states' rights, federal authority, human bondage. Tourists photograph spots where democracy nearly destroyed itself through vicious sectional hatred and devastating ideological warfare between brothers. But Longstreet's true monument isn't bronze or stone. It's the uncomfortable questions his story raises about leadership ethics, institutional loyalty, and the moral courage required to say no when yes means unnecessary death and destruction. History judges commanders not by their obedience to authority, but by their wisdom in exercising it. Not by their loyalty to superiors, but by their faithfulness to subordinates who trusted them with their precious, irreplaceable lives. James Longstreet died knowing he was tactically correct about Gettysburg's futility. That knowledge brought no comfort, only bitter understanding that being right and being heard are tragically different things in both war and peace, then and now, always.